80% of the conversation, they should be talking. 20%, you should be talking. And whoever's asking the questions is in control of the call. So if they're leading with, oh, tell me about your business. No, what about this? And what do you charge? And, oh, give me some of your results. And like they're leading the conversation, you've lost control of that call. It's not going to be enrollment because they're not looking to you as the expert. They're looking to you as somebody to give them answers as a service provider or an employee. Not going to work.
This is Experts Unleashed, revealing how professionals and entrepreneurs transform experience into income while positively impacting the world. For years, Joel Urway has helped entrepreneurs develop and launch their expert-based businesses, growing them beyond 6 and even 7 figures a year. Now, a professional expert serves their community through paid training, education, or service. This podcast will help you design and execute your plan to become a 6 or 7 figure expert without a massive team. To get more information or apply now, visit theperfectexpert.com. Let's get started.
Hey, what's going on, experts? It's Joel here with another episode of Experts Unleashed, and you are in for an amazing interview today. I have the very special, a good friend of mine I've known for about a year now. We've worked together. I have referred clients to him, and I brag about him all the time whenever somebody's looking for sales expertise. We have on the call today, Peter Frumenti from Sales Team 6. And what we're going to be talking about today is his journey through becoming an entrepreneur, his journey through developing what he has now as an irresistible offer for experts who are looking to scale their sales teams. And I'm excited about our conversation today. Peter, welcome to the show.
Hey, Joel, excited to be here, man. Yeah, definitely got lots of stuff I want to dive in and talk to you about today.
Dude, I'm pumped. I'm really excited to talk. Do us a favor here. Now, I know all about you. I know your sales leadership skills. I know all about your background and the different types of teams that you've helped, different types of sales teams that you've helped build to multi-million-dollar empires. But do us a favor, brag about yourself a little bit, introduce yourself, and then we'll kick off our show.
So obviously I'm Peter Frumenti. I'm the founder of Sales Team 6. We help using authentic enrollment, our authentic enrollment process. We help transformational experts in life and in business actually develop their own sales system and process that they can then transfer to a team of highly trained professionals that can help them scale their business by taking them off the phones and allowing the team to actually do the sales for them while also reducing the refund rates and improving the client results by doing that first call right and setting the stage for their success in whatever program they're joining.
So you mentioned something real quick. I mean, obviously we had a pre-call before this. You mentioned that we help reduce the refund rates. So I want to come back to that real quick, but I'm just kind of putting that out there right now because I think that's a really, really critical aspect in terms of sales and enrollment. What do you think is the biggest hang up with experts who are looking to either close more clients or grow a sales team, right? When you're working with a brand new client, like what are the primary struggles that they're having that causes them to reach out to you?
Really the number one thing almost always is the way that they think about sales, right? Like I say all the time, one of the number one things I say, it's just a conversation. And the problem is most people build sales up to be this thing in their mind where they've got to like cajole or convince somebody to buy their service or product. And for them, oftentimes whenever I go and I speak at a conference and I go around the room and I say, okay, so, what are your thoughts when it comes to sales? And the first thing out of almost everybody's mind, and these are people who are actively selling and building their businesses. These are entrepreneur type masterminds and conferences. And the first thing they almost always say is pushy, their responses are almost always about how sales is sort of this dirty word, like the bad thing. So the number one thing is the way you think about sales. The way I think about it is it's an authentic conversation where you're learning exactly where a person's at, where they want to go, what the gap is. And then naturally, if you can fill that gap and you can bridge them from where they are to where they want to go, then it's a simple, easy conversation. And that's the main way to think about it. But of course, to do that, you have to actually dig below the surface because most, especially entrepreneurs, when you're on a business offer, but even people who are looking to hire an expert to lose weight or find love in their life or whatever it may be, their ego gets in the way, and they don't always give you more than just the surface level of like what's really going on with them, why they want that change, why it's so painful for them to not have it, so that you can help them move past their fear when, especially in the high ticket space, they get to the end and realize, wow, I think this person can totally help me, but there's a high ticket price attached. And so if you do that conversation, if you think about that conversation right, and then you treat it like a conversation, like almost a coaching session where you carry them through that process, you really create a chance for them to authentically enroll in your program.
You said something that was really powerful there. You talked about getting past the surface level desire. And it's almost like that's the difference between sales and marketing, right? I'm in the marketing field. I'm not necessarily in the sales field. And when I'm helping clients develop their power offers and develop their messages to get people on the phone, we focus a lot on the surface level desires to get them to raise their hand like, yes, I've got a problem, right? And then when it comes, it sounds like what you're saying is when it comes to authentic enrollment, it's getting below the surface and just having that conversation and allowing them to open up and figuring out if there's a mutual way that you guys can beneficially help each other. Is that accurate?
Right. Because like with the surface level marketing piece, it's, oh, I want to lose weight. I'm sick of being tired all the time and, sick of not fitting into my, the suit for that wedding I'm going to, whatever it is, right? Some sort of surface level thing. But when you dig in on an enrollment call, it's getting below that surface and finding out why. Why is it that you want to change that? How does it feel to have tried all of these things and continue to hit your head against the wall, and really getting to that, because people don't, people buy the destination, they don't buy the plane. And so what they think they want is to lose weight or to grow their business to the next level, or, whatever it is that the offer is, purporting to supply them. However, there's a reason, a deep yearning of why they want that. And that's the reason they're going, especially in the high ticket space, that's the reason they're going to invest a high ticket dollar amount, is because there is that below the surface level. And so, for example, when you're talking to somebody who, and I use weight loss quite a bit, I'm in a weight loss program myself, and I know exactly what got me to buy that program. And it's a year-long coaching program that I spent, that I spent 5 figures on. And I look at that, and part of what, gets a person to buy is that, oh, I want to be there to see my kids get married. I don't want to die of a heart attack before I'm 40 and then not be able to walk down the aisle with my daughter, or it's something like that. And so when you can get to that level on a sales call, then when the high ticket price comes at the end, as long as you walk them through a clear path of connecting the dots for them of how you're going to solve their problem, then they're already there. And when they get afraid to invest, you can bring it back to that below the surface level reason of why they want this so bad.
Do you find that some people have resistance to some of your clients? Okay. Do you find that some of your clients have resistance to asking those questions, to digging deep? Like me personally, I would have a hard time, asking them to open up, and it's almost like embarrassing. It's like, for me, it would be embarrassing. Like the way that I do it is maybe a little bit differently. But do you find that there's a lot of resistance with people wanting to get their prospects to open up?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's most people really feel like, oh, well, they actually feel it's the opposite. They sometimes feel like it's salesy, like, oh, I can't ask that, or, oh, that's really hard to ask that. But it's interesting. Once you actually work with somebody, you get them to ask it, and all of a sudden the prospect on the phone just opens up and starts pouring their heart out. And don't get me wrong, it doesn't always happen. You have to really position yourself right in the way you frame the call to be able to get that. But a large chunk of people want the chance to actually open up and share what's going on. And in fact, most of the time, I go to a lot of networking mixers, live in-person networking mixers. And my favorite thing is, I love to just study humans and to stand in a room with other people. And, you've got the guy who's walking around like spending 4 seconds with every person, just shoving their business card in their hand. Right. And then you've got the people who are like genuinely trying to connect and talk and learn about each other. But oftentimes when I listen to a lot of these conversations where people are going back and forth, they're not actually communicating. Like you will literally see 2 people talking. And if you're paying attention, they're having 2 different conversations. They're just waiting for the other person to stop so that they can speak. And one of the things that I learned and that, really helped me build my business is through networking and masterminds and things like that before I got into online marketing and really promoting myself through marketing and advertising. And when I would do that, I would go and all I would do is ask questions and listen intently for the answers, just like I do on a sales call. And I would learn about that person. And it was so funny because often I'd walk away and I didn't really tell them anything. But, that person would say to a friend of mine or a colleague or something, wow, Peter was just such a great conversationalist. Because I actually asked questions, I listened to the answers, and then I naturally took the conversation where they wanted it to go. So they felt it was this great conversation. And so that was really how I built a lot of rapport and got a lot of people that reach out to find out more about working with me. But what I learned through that process is that people are absolutely seeking that opportunity to express themselves. And most cases, people aren't listening to them. So when they feel deeply heard on a sales call, there's a level of trust that is built. And so especially when you're building a sales team, it's a little different for you, Joel. Like you jump on the phone and, people are like, oh, it's Joel. Here's the star of the show. I've heard him on the podcast. I've seen him on all this different content marketing. So, I want to work with Joel. But, and most experts can do that. But when you start to build a sales team, they don't have that star power and that knowledge and that expertise. So they've got to have a different sort of authentic way to develop that trust, and listening and asking really powerful questions is how you do that.
Awesome. It's really powerful. So one of the things that I picked up on that you mentioned is all about like framing the call. And after having been on so many calls and even interviews, like pretty much any sort of conversation that I've been on, I've learned that like the way you start something sets the tone for everything. Like the way it's framed in the very beginning sets the tone for the conversation. Doesn't matter if it's a sales call, doesn't matter if it's an interview, doesn't matter if it's any typical conversation that you have with anyone, right? Framework is so powerful. So can you give us some common mistakes that happen when people, when a sales call is not properly framed?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, one of the things that happens a lot, and so we talk a lot about the expert frame at our company, Sales Team 6, and we really train how to set up that expert frame. And so there's really three pieces of the expert frame that it takes to really pull that off. The first one is how you first set that expectation up front in the call. The second piece is that you do less of the talking. You actually ask the questions. Like if you go to the doctor's office, the doctor doesn't say much. He asks you questions and you give him all the symptoms and all the things that you're going through. And he just listens and takes notes and writes things down and, diagnoses. And then the third piece is actually the way you qualify and actually making sure that the person is going to get results by asking good questions about, what kind of quality client they're going to be, as well as, how bad they actually want it and some of those things. So I'll talk about all three of those things. So the very first thing is that expert frame at the very beginning, which starts with a very simple way of just setting the stage for the call so that they know what to expect. And so I pretty much do the same thing almost every time that I get on a call. I really, succinctly just say, hey, so Joel, really nice to talk to you today. I'm super excited. I build a little rapport first, right? This is after you talk for a minute about the weather or whatever. And so it's like, okay, so hey, Joel, so let's just dive in. The way this call is going to work today, I want to learn from you, like what's going on right now in, whatever area we're talking about. I want to know where you're at. I want to know where you want to go. I want to know the gap between here and there. And if we can help you bridge that gap, I'll share with you exactly what that looks like. But no matter what, we're going to get you a little bit of clarity today. We're going to have a little bit of fun as well. Does that sound good? Okay. And so, basically now they know. And so we've really set the expectation. And then from there, we go into what I call the 80-20 rule, which, the Pareto principle. 80% of the conversation, they should be talking. 20%, you should be talking. And whoever's asking the questions is in control of the call. So if they're leading with, oh, tell me about your business. No, what about this? And what do you charge? And, oh, give me some of your results. And like they're leading the conversation, you've lost control of that call. It's not going to be enrollment because they're not looking to you as the expert. They're looking to you as somebody to give them answers as a service provider or an employee. Not going to work. And then the final piece is, when you get past and you understand all that they want and what it's going to take, to get there and what it's costing them to not have it. And then you go into, okay, now let's look at qualifying, that you would actually, now I understand where you're at. I understand where you want to go. I understand why it's so important to you. Now let's qualify you to be a good client. You start to ask the questions that tell us, are they the kind of people that would be successful working with us? And then that final piece again, it positions you as the expert, that you're not just trying to sell them something, you're trying to make sure you can help them with something.
Awesome. So when you're asking questions, right? I know from experience for myself, as an interviewer, I always like the way that I run a podcast is I love to give feedback when somebody gives me, like, I'll ask questions, I'll listen to the answer, and then I will, I'll banter back and forth or ask to elaborate. Is that acceptable on a sales call? Like, you just gave me an answer. My natural tendency as, you know, obviously this is not a sales conversation, right? But it's still kind of like an interview. It is an interview. And it's kind of like, I view sales conversations very similar. Maybe I should view them differently, right? When I ask a question on a sales call and I get an answer, do I just move to the next question, or do I provide that banter back and forth and kind of elaborate on what they're talking about?
I mean, you want to be careful. Now, again, you know, when you're the expert who's on the call, you can get away with a lot more than a salesperson that you've hired to sell for you, as I've kind of mentioned. Now, would your closing rate would probably go up, almost definitely. In fact, I've seen it time and again with the clients who bring us on, because we teach them our method first so that they can lead their team once they hire a team to use that method. And so we always see that even if they're great closers, we always see there's a couple extra sales they get every month just by making some of the changes that we teach. And one of those is to be part of being the expert is you do want to stay in that sort of doctor frame. You know, if your doctor's asking you about, you know, the cancerous growth on your thigh, he's not also then going to make jokes about it, you know, in between, because he doesn't like, and this isn't why he's doing it, but for you as the salesperson, as the expert on the call, you don't want to lighten the pain that they're feeling around whatever problem it is that they want to solve. You don't want to provide coaching on the call that makes them start to think, oh, well, I can just solve this without you. Now, don't get me wrong. If like one piece of advice would solve all their problems and they don't really need to purchase from you, then also as the leader and expert and being totally authentic, then give them that one answer and send them off, you know, to do it on their own. But the reality is we both know that if they're 99% of the time, if they're on a call with an expert like you or me, they've got a major problem. It isn't going to be a simple fix, and they need someone to walk them through that process to get the outcome, to get to the solution. So that one little piece of advice isn't going to solve it. So you do want to be careful to keep the banter and the coaching and some of those things out. And what you do want to do, though, is you do want to show empathy. So when somebody's telling you, it's not that you want to just be sort of cold and, you know, calculated in the conversation. You do want to, like, when they say something like, you know, I'm not getting enough leads, and I'm probably going to have to go back to the day job that I had, and I hated my job, and, you know, my boss was awful, and like my wife and I fought, you know, like this is the below the surface level stuff we get to on a call. Then you're just like, you know, you do some of that, but you don't necessarily want to make light of it or banter. You want to, like, you know, get it. Now, again, keep rapport throughout the call. The key thing with this is that you need to be willing and able to break rapport as an expert when somebody is being foolish. And I mean that, like, if you're on a call with somebody and they think something simple as, oh, I'm just going to start a Facebook group and that's going to solve all my marketing problems, right? Like, you know, you need to be willing to be the expert and help them see that one solution isn't going to solve it. And, you know, maybe they're being silly in that instance.
That was powerful. So the doctor framework is, because that's ultimately what's going to get them to move forward. You have to keep them in the state of pain. And I can tell you without a shadow of a doubt, I know I've lost sales because I'm a friendly guy, and I have broken that doctor framework and just want to be friendly with them. Like, don't want to be pushy, but ultimately, you know, people buy on pain and pleasure. And a lot of people in our space are solving some form of pain for their client. And I totally get it now. I totally get it. Like, you have to keep them in. If my tooth hurts, right? If I've got a swollen gum or whatever it is, an infected tooth, I'm going to sit in the doctor's office, and I don't want him to crack jokes. Like, I just want him to pull the damn thing out of me. Right.
Right. Well, and the other thing to keep in mind too, and this is the hardest part, I think, especially for a lot of heart-centered people to do when they get into doing sales, to promote, you know, to sell their expert products or solutions, is that they want to take people out of pain. That's why that's why you and I do what we do. Like, we want to solve people's problems, make their lives and their businesses better. We're both heart-centered guys. We're friendly. Like it was one of the hardest things for me to really learn this level of sales, because at first I thought, oh my gosh, I've got to, like, as you said, keep people in pain. The reality is they're in pain. And while their ego may sort of project that everything's okay, and they may talk around it, and they may try to sort of ignore that pain absolutely exists, and it's there. And most people just allow them to just ignore that pain, and they stay on the surface. But when you allow somebody to actually fully get clarity on the pain and the things they've been feeling and what's been standing in their way from breaking through to the next barrier, you're actually serving them at the highest level. And the key thing to keep in mind is that we can't put a Band-Aid on a bleeding artery. And so when we sort of make light and make things seem to be smaller than they are, we sort of put this Band-Aid on it. The problem is they're still going to bleed out. And so by actually allowing them to fully recognize the pain that they're in and say it out loud and express it, they finally have the realization. Because even though deep down they've maybe thought about it, they've maybe felt it, they've never fully addressed it and confronted it head on. And so I learned this because I've been a coach now for 10 years. I went through International Coaching Federation. I was a broke coach for a long time. I learned how to coach first before I learned sales and marketing. But what I did is I took that coaching skill that I learned and I transferred it into the sales process. So really, what we're doing is we're doing that same thing that a coach would do. We're asking powerful questions. We're learning about a person at a deep level. And then they make the decision, oh my gosh, wow, I didn't realize this is where I've been, and this is why I'm stuck. I have to address this pain by hiring an expert to walk me through the solution. So I don't know, does that make sense?
100%. 100%. It does. And it solidifies the doctor framework, which I think is really, really powerful, right? Because if you set that stage early on. So everyone always has anxiety of not knowing what to expect. This is in marketing. This is in sales. And anxieties are high, especially if you're just getting started out learning how to sell on the phone or do any sort of sales. You're going to have anxieties, and so is the prospect on the other end of the call, most likely. And so setting that framework just lowers that expectation, or I'm sorry, not lowers the expectation, sets the expectation and lowers the anxiety, saying, okay, cool, this is what's going to happen. And then it's your responsibility to always stay in that doctor framework, so they understand that, okay, I am in pain. This is what it means to me, and this is the path forward. Love it.
Right. Exactly. 100%.
Okay. So I want to go back to one of the things that I talked about earlier, which was refund rates. And I think this whole idea of framework expectations is probably where we're going to go next with the refund rates, because we've got, setting the expectation on the start of the sales call, and then great, they're ready to move forward by the end of it. I think that there's a lot to be said for how you proceed with the sale and making sure that they don't regret their purchase, right? What do you think are the primary causes of high refund rates, and how do we address that?
So yeah, there's two primary reasons that refund rates are high typically. And one of them, and they're both really related to the client success and expectations. So first of all, it's not setting the expectations correctly during the sales call, so that they know what they're buying. So if what they think they're buying and then they get in and it's not what they expected, you're going to have high refund rates. And then secondarily is the way your client success is actually set up, so that even if you've set the expectations right of what the program does, but the process by which you take people to that outcome, to that promised land, isn't set up to help them feel supported throughout the journey, hold them accountable, and more than anything, empower them to get the result, then it's, you're going to have high refund rates. So those are the two biggest things. So how you do that in the sales process is really by setting it up so that, when you really position yourself as the expert, and we focus on a few things, and we could talk more about them to make a sales call successful. We focus on the pain that they're in, like the general and specific, the doubts that they've got about their ability to solve it on their own, and their cost of, what's actually costing them to stay where they're at versus moving forward to the outcome that they want. And so when you handle that call authentically and you do it right, you take them through that process, you build in their mind, not only yourself as an expert, but as a trusted advisor who is going to support them, but also hold them accountable. And so then the fourth piece of that is the way you qualify them. And I alluded to that a little bit earlier. When you do a good job qualifying them and asking, are you going to do the work? When it gets hard, what are you going to do? If you're struggling and something comes up during the process, are you going to reach out for support, or are you just going to hide, not tell us that you're struggling, right? Like really qualifying that person so that they feel like they understand what their expectations are. So it's really all about setting expectations and building that level of trust. And again, when you do this authentically and you ask powerful questions and you get to a place of understanding their pain, their doubts, all their costs, and you qualify they're going to be a good client, when you do all of those things, they feel like, wow, this is an expert I can trust. And they're much more likely, if they have a problem in the program, to reach out and tell either the salesperson that enrolled them or the expert, if that was the salesperson, or the expert who runs the program. They're going to reach out and let them know because you've set that expectation correctly in the sales process.
Makes sense. So this has all been awesome. I've been taking notes. I've got a full page of notes already. The expert framework, the doctor framework. One of the main things that I loved those three sets that you just talked about: pain, doubts, and costs, right? And that's really that's how we kind of, for lack of a better word, it's kind of like pouring salt on an open wound. People really expressing and coming to self-realization, like, oh crap, I'm in trouble and it hurts, and here's what's going to happen if I don't solve it, right? I've never actually heard it. It sounds simple, but I've never heard it explained like that. So I love it, man. Okay, cool. So this has been fascinating, Peter. What I want to do right now is I want to go and I want to kick it back into our rewind section. So I want to talk about the journey that got you to where you are today. Like, did you wake up, as a kid saying, I'm going to be a sales team trainer, right? I'm assuming the answer is no, right? Or maybe it's
No.
yes. But.
No, I definitely didn't. In fact, even a few years ago, I was avoiding becoming a sales trainer, and I could share a lot about some of that.
Yeah, let's talk about it, man. So let's talk about how you got started in this space and what led you here.
Yeah, so I've been in sales pretty much, since the first lemonade stand, as a kid. But my first job. I guess it was my second job. I worked at McDonald's first. My second job was selling shoes for Florsheim shoes, and that was kind of where I got started, getting the knack for sales. But the big difference there, and all the sales jobs I had for the years after that, everything from telecom to hotel sales. I did corporate sales for hotels and banquet space, insurance. Every bit of sales. It was all rapport-based selling. And that was the number one thing. And that's what I find most people do. They're really good at getting people to like them. And then, it's a natural progression to do business with people that you like, with the relationships that you have. And you can get to meet a great middle of the road mediocrity place with rapport-based selling. And so I was a mediocre salesperson most of my life. In many ways, I would always be the superstar on the team because I was really good at that rapport piece. But there was a level below that, a deeper level to go to. And I knew I wanted that, but I wasn't really sure how to go about it. I don't even know that I really knew it existed until the opportunity came along where I got into coaching. And I spent several years as a broke coach trying to figure out, and I did okay, but I wasn't, killing it the way I wanted to. And part of that was because I didn't really know marketing. I just knew sales. And so I was still rapport selling, building relationships, going out and finding clients. But I wasn't killing it. I wasn't building the business that I wanted. So finally, I took a job doing high ticket sales for another coach. And that coach is pretty big in the space. I was able to work my way into that opportunity and became one of their top salesperson for a couple of years. And along that path, I kept watching people come through their organization and burn out, and they weren't succeeding. And I kind of started to feel for some of these people that were coming along that I really liked as humans, but who weren't making the cut. And so I'm like, hey, let's just figure out what they're doing wrong. So I started offering to review their calls, providing some coaching, and just doing that on the side. And the first time I did that, the very first guy who'd been there about 3 weeks was about to lose his job. He basically sent me one of his calls. I'm like, man, here's a few tweaks, and I gave him some coaching. He made some changes. He made three sales within the next week. And I was like, wow, this is really good. And next thing he became, in fact, I had to start competing with him. He became one of the top sales guys. And then another guy came onto the team, same kind of thing. And so all of a sudden, these people who weren't succeeding, I was able to help them get to that next place. Well, the organization I was working for, they had their process, they had their sales coaching, they had their stuff set up. They weren't looking for someone to coach. I wanted to move out of doing the day-to-day sales and actually build my own business. I wanted to get more into coaching. So I made the decision to jump off on my own. And I started by just coaching experts, like actually, had a high ticket product that would help experts fix their sales and make more sales authentically. Well, very quickly, they wanted me to help them build a team because they wanted to get off the phone. So then I started doing that. And then that led into, over the last few years, we've worked with some of the top online high ticket coaches in the industry, helping them build their teams, helping them grow their teams. And we've rolled that into, we work with a lot of different clients, everything from business offers to relationship offers to health offers. And we help them build their team. And the key thing that we learned was that when you build a sales team, a lot of people want to just hire somebody to bring in closers. The problem with that is it doesn't work because they're not able to sell in that authentic way. Mm-hmm. And you might get a superstar, but if you want to build a team of salespeople that can sell consistently, they've actually got to, there's certain components like belief and certainty about the offer that they've got to have, a process that we teach with the pain, the doubt, the cost, the qualify, and the connect the dots, that they've got to have to succeed. And so that was kind of the journey for me of just being in sales my whole life. But it was funny because I really, when I first thought I was going to put a high ticket offer out there, I didn't want to do something related to sales, but I sort of got pushed into it because I was good at the sales process itself. And then I was even better at coaching it. And now for me, I had the same problem that I've talked about, where I felt like sales was this sort of pushy thing, this sort of inauthentic thing. Even though it wasn't the way I did it, I never felt super comfortable about sales because even my mom was like, oh, you're a salesman. She was, she'd make jokes about that. So it was never totally congruent with me. But now what I do when I look around, like we teach an authentic sales process that helps these transformational experts have their impact on the world. And I look at that and the people that we impact exponentially through this transformation economy that's occurring as the coaching industry becomes a multi-billion-dollar industry. And now I'm like, wow, we're having this positive impact on the world by helping these transformational experts get their products and services out there to the masses by having an authentic enrollment process.
What do you think is the primary struggle that people have then when building a team, right? It's like, okay, maybe the expert is doing a good job of closing. And I know you said people are just looking for closers and that might work with one person, but let's say you're going from one salesperson to 3 or 4 salespeople. You've got the lead flow to handle that. What's the biggest pitfall that happens when that happens?
The biggest pitfall is typically what happens is you get that, like a lot of times you burn out before you even get them, but some people get lucky and they get that one closer who's like, oh my gosh, they're closing at 30-40%. He can do it just like I do it, and it's like awesome. And then they could spend the next 5 years trying to find a second person like that and never find that second person because, I'm a great example, right? You could hand me a script. And when I say script, I'm not huge on scripts, but I mean a structure of like what your offer is and what it entails and like what problems it solves. And I can jump on a phone call, obviously, and I can enroll anybody. I can cultivate a belief in the offer, as long as there's no evidence to the contrary, because I have to believe in something or I can't sell it. But I can cultivate that belief very quickly on just about any offer. I can jump in and I can, and I can sell it 30-40% or better, depending on the lead. But the average person can't do that. The average person is not able to cultivate that level of belief, and they want all these details. They want the client success stories. They want the case studies. They want to understand how the program works. They want to log in. They want to poke around. They want to see exactly what the program is. And even when they do that, if there's things that aren't set up right and that they see as an issue, then that starts to build, doubts in their mind. And so to be able to find that kind of person that can just shut off like all their emotion, which is not necessarily the way that I do it, but what you find in a lot of high ticket closers is they can just shut off all their emotion. They can pretend like they have this high level of belief in a program or service, and they could just sell it without any concerns about the consequences. And some of those the problem with some of those high ticket closers is they actually, and I don't want to say this because it's, about anyone in particular, but there are some people who just don't care. They're just happy to make the commission and that's it. Now, the problem with that is those types of people typically are the ones that are going to get you higher refund issues because they will just cajole and push people into the sale. Mm-hmm. And so the big key distinction that gets you to a team of 3 or 4 closers is to develop a company culture and have a systematic process for not only the way that they sell, but the way that you enroll them onto the team, the way that you orient them to the offer, the way that you orient them to the sales process. Because if you are missing things when you enroll them onto your team, they start to wonder, well, gosh, this onboarding was a mess when I came on, right? Like I've had teams where, they told me that when they first got hired, no one even told them how to take payment. And then they got to the end of the call and realized, I don't even know what I'm doing. So they just took down the credit card info and didn't know what to do. And they just felt super, like it was super incongruent. And then of course that brought up doubts for them. Like, well, what happens when I get somebody to commit $8,000 to join this program? And then is the onboarding for them going to be like that? Because, the average person who's going to do well in sales has to believe in the offer. So the number one thing is cultivating that authentic belief in the offer that they're selling.
Yeah, that makes total sense because belief is everything, right? And it comes through on a call too. I've had a lot of sales conversations where people will tell me afterwards, after I enroll them, they said, well, the reason why I enrolled was because I could tell that you believed in me. Like I could tell your excitement for helping me achieve this result. And so from what I understand, what you're saying is the biggest thing is instilling that belief in your salespeople, that authentic belief that makes it so it's systematic and scalable. So it's almost like systemizing belief in your team so that translates on the calls. I mean, is that accurate?
Right. We teach you how to develop a culture of belief in your organization so that your entire team, I mean, you can really relate that to everybody, but especially your sales team has that culture of belief. And once you've got that, it really is everything. Because when you're on a call, you can relay that certainty because you can literally picture the client and where they're going to be 60 days, 90 days, 6 months from now, if they follow your advice and do what you're going to teach them to do. So you can actually see that outcome, like clearly visualize it because you're the expert and you know the steps it'll take and what that's going to look like. A salesperson has to have a level of that and you have to cultivate it for them because if you don't cultivate that in them, then all they have is a script and they can close at 8, 10%, 12% with a script, and no belief. But man, when you cultivate a level of belief and you give them a systematic process for how to go about enrolling people authentically into your program, their belief just gets better and better and better. And then you continue to cultivate that belief in the time that they're working for you as well, right? Like the best thing in the world, a salesperson, if they follow our process and our system, they're going to come out the gate swinging. They're going to be able to close. Once they get through the interview process, they get to the point where they're actually somebody on the team, they're going to be able to close. But what happens over a few months as they enroll people and then those people get results and you as the business owner come back and share those specific, hey, Tom, you remember that guy, Bill that you enrolled like 2 months ago? Here's where he's at now. And you shared the screenshots and the story of their success. And more and more of those things start to happen. That salesperson's belief goes higher and higher and higher. And that's when you see their closing rate climb higher and higher and higher as well.
Makes total sense, man. Dude, I have enjoyed this conversation tremendously. Every time that I talk to somebody who is an expert at really what they do, I'm learning so much more and I get excited again, like just getting excited about, getting excited about sales. I don't hop on too many sales calls now, but it's just a breath of fresh air to talk to somebody who gets it, because I've always had the belief that with sales, you have to be pushy. And so I love the angle of building a heart-centered place, looking for leadership, because what it really is it's, you mentioned that before when you were selling shoes and all your other sales gigs, you were always, the best at what you did, but you knew there was another level. Like you went from rapport-based selling to now being heart-based. And I think that says a lot, just being able to see that shift and see that transition that you made. Because I think a lot of people who are friendly, like, oh, I do fine. I'm friendly with them, but there is that other level. Out of curiosity, when you made that shift, how much did your sales double? Like by percentage wise, was it like a 20% boost, or was it more significant than that?
It was, I really switched industries to do that. But I mean, when I first came in, I was just rapport selling, which is how I started when I got into the high ticket space. I was closing like, 12 to 15%. And when I made that shift and I really got to the place of the expert frame and I stood in my ground as the expert, even though it wasn't my offer that I was selling, that's when I saw things, go up 25, 30% consistently. And there were times when the leads were really good that, I could close 40% of the leads that were hopping on the phone with me. So it was literally a doubling of or tripling of my sales closing rate. And I will say, one of the key shifts that I really, really made in that, I think it's really an important distinction, is I am 100% willing to tell somebody that this isn't a good fit for them and to refer them to somebody else that is. And that piece is so powerful, because I really will. If I'm talking to somebody and it's like, this isn't the right thing for you. Yeah, I know you want to give me your money. And I've literally had these conversations, but I don't think you should. This is what you should do right now before you even consider working with us. Here's a reference, go, referral, go do that. And I'll tell you, not only does that really create the authenticity and reduce any like feelings you've got about being pushy or, sales not being a heart-centered thing. But the other piece of that is that those people come back, and not only do they come back and do business with you, they refer you, and they tell, hey, he's not a hard sales guy, but he told me not to work with him. You got to talk to this guy. And so those people become champions for you. So not only did I do really, really well in closing like cold traffic that had never heard of the offer that I was on the day before, but I also started getting more referrals than anybody else on the team, coming from outside sources and people that I'd spoken to that I didn't even sell to, because I built that level of authenticity that they knew if they sent someone to me, they were going to get the kind of counsel that was going to help them grow. And so it was just a win-win all the way around.
Fantastic. And I think that's something a lot of people don't do, because they approach the sales call saying, I got to close this person because my business depends on it. But when it's happened to me as well, where I've turned people away and I've referred them to the right people, that comes back 3 or 4-fold eventually. Yeah. It takes some time, and it's not going to happen immediately, but it does come back in a positive light.
It's a long game.
It is definitely a long game.
Yeah.
Peter, man, I appreciate our conversation today. I've had a blast. Hopefully you have had fun talking about this. You probably talk about it all the time as the expert in building sales teams and heart-centered enrollment. Is there anything that we didn't mention that you wanted to make sure that we covered on the call today?
I think the last thing is, I know a lot of people, you're probably wondering, well, how do I implement this into my sales process? And, one of the things that I've developed is a client enrollment assessment call guide. And so if that'd be helpful, I'd be happy to share that with you so that you can, share it with your followers. And basically what that does, it walks them through like, hey, here's a question. Did you do this? Did you do this? And that'll tell you, because you know how you get off the call and you go, wow, was that one even closable? I don't know. So I created a guide that'll help you determine whether or not the call you were just on was actually an enrollable call.
That'd be super helpful. Yeah, let's share the link.
So they can go to online sales team 6, the number 6, online sales team 6.com/experts unleashed. And I just put it there for you so that anybody can grab it.
Awesome. Yeah, we'll make sure that we put the link in the show notes as well. But that'd be super helpful. I'm sure that everyone listening right now would get tons of value from that. Peter, man, it's always great to connect with you. It's always great to chat. I've talked to you a bunch. We've worked together, and even after this call today, I'm just like, oh man, like I can love sales again. Like I can get excited about sales again. So I appreciate you sharing your knowledge and your wisdom with our audience today. And if you're listening right now, go connect with Peter. Go hit up his link and online sales team 6. .com/experts unleashed. Grab that guide and just let him know that you heard him on the podcast and you got some value. So, Peter, we're going to wrap up today and we'll see you all on the next episode. Take care.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Experts Unleashed. If you're looking for new and innovative ways to design and execute your plan to become a 6 or 7 figure expert without the massive team, apply now at theperfectexpert.com.